And I struggled because I was trying to sell in a way that I was taught to sell with different steps. Then I stepped away and I said, wait a minute, I can do this. So I got to come up with my own way of doing this. I also teach my clients voice inflection, the power of using your voice as an instrument, and how you can use your voice to make it rise and fall and create sort of a wow factor in your presentation. There's so many like layers because they want to be listened to. And if we take the time to stop talking, it's a big part of what I train. Is I can help you with verbiage, but then there's a part. I even have it in writing and in some of my curriculum, my worksheets. It says stop talking.
Welcome to another episode of Full Arch Advantage podcast, where we go into how to create, convert, and close more full arch cases. And I love my job because I get to talk to awesome people all the time. And today I just wrapped up the show with Sherrine Washington, who is the CEO of Real Talk Selling. And she dove into the details of, number one, how someone presenting treatment to her changed her life, and now how she's helping other people transform their lives. And she gave some gold nuggets that you are not going to want to miss. So make sure you stay tuned. Well, thank you again for coming on. I'm really excited about our conversation today. Could you give us a little bit of background on how you got into the dental industry?
Yes, I can. So most people who know me in the industry, they know my background working at Clear Choice. I was a top producer at Clear Choice for many years. And when I transitioned from Clear Choice, I decided to go into private practice, working for smaller implant centers here in Charlotte, North Carolina. But I do have an interesting background, even though I've been in sales and I've sold over $35 million in dental treatment.
Wow.
I have a background as a clinician. I was a mental health therapist for 10 years. And so that's pretty much how Real Talk Selling evolved. Yeah, I was a mental health therapist doing mostly substance abuse work, some adolescent therapy, and some adult therapy. And so when I worked in sales, particularly working at Clear Choice, I used to do things really, really differently. And they didn't bother me about it because I sold. And so they said, I used to have doctors say to me, Sherrine, you're onto something. What is it about you? And what I realized, Real Talk Selling was actually evolving at that time because I took my clinical background as a therapist so that there would be a non-confrontational, non-salesy approach to selling, and created the Real Talk Selling system, which feels good from the soul, both from the salesperson perspective, and then that translates to the patient.
Yeah, because we know how much dentists hate the word sales, right? And selling and those kind of things. And then also patients don't like being sold, right? They want to be educated on their medical, especially on medical. When I go to the doctor, I never want to be sold. I want to be educated on what I need and why it's the best option for me. And I want to weigh that against all of my options because it's my body. I only get one of them, right? It's not like it's more important than a car or house or anything else I'm going to buy. So just give a little bit of your framework that you use of like how like an office should be selling. How is an office supposed to sell? Because you said something that it feels good from the soul. Like what does that mean exactly? Sorry to disrupt the show, but I just have a quick commercial for you. We are going to be hosting 4 events over the next 12 months, and we're doing a little bit of everything for everybody. We have something around full arch. We have something for those that manage marketing. We have something for those that want to scale their practice at Dykema. And then also we have something next year that's for everybody in your practice to learn business skills and to really maximize the opportunities for you to grow your offices. You're not going to want to miss these. Visit smcnational.com/events. These are going to be the premier events that you're going to want to go to make sure that you're getting the tactical skills that you need to continue to grow the way that you want. Because at SMC, we're all about growing.
Well, I think because I train offices all over the United States, actually in outside of the United States. And I think the biggest mistake that I see a lot of offices make is that they try to, especially with 5-figure cases, they try to sell treatment to every patient the same way. And they struggle with the ability to see that while we may see different patients coming in and they might want the same type of treatment, patients are coming in and they want to be led, but they want to be led respectfully. And they don't want necessarily someone based off of their personality getting really clinical with them in losing them and causing what I call cognitive overload, where the brain starts to shut down and they're getting too much information. And so I think that the first step in the process is to be in tune that as human beings, we are all different, but we are all predictably different. And that we can't
Mm.
have a one size fits all approach to how we interact with our patients. All our patients are wanting to do is to be able to, they want to be listened to. And if we take the time to stop talking, that's a big part of what I train is I can help you with verbiage, but then there's a part. I even have it in writing and in some of my curriculum, my worksheets. It says stop talking.
So instead of real talk, it's real listening, right?
That's real listening. Yes.
Yeah.
If we take the opportunity to really dig deep, to not just find out the patient's goal, but what I say is to find out the goal behind their goal. If we can do that, it's not eating a steak, it's not biting into an apple. It might be eating a steak at a restaurant on a date for the first time in 15 years
Mm.
with a guy who could be my spouse, and we
Mm.
might have children together, right? We're not getting deep enough. And so it takes a certain level of sophistication, conversations, being able to monitor nonverbal behaviors. I also teach my clients voice inflection, the power of using your voice as an instrument, and how you can use your voice to make it rise and fall and create sort of a wow factor in your presentation. There's so many like
Yeah.
layers
There's
to it.
layers, yeah. But
Yeah.
I think that the big takeaway is there is no one size fits all, but there was two things that you said. When you started going in deeper, like the voice and those kind of things, how long does it take for someone to become like really good at selling large cases?
So I am always the first to admit when I started selling five-figure cases, I struggled. And I struggled because I was trying to sell in a way that I was taught to sell with different steps. And then I stepped away and I said, wait a minute, I can do this. So I got to come up with my own way of doing this. And I think the moment that I realized that not having something that was so regimented, but knowing that I got to be able to like stop for a second, create the space sometimes in my mind. Like I got to think. I do it even when I coach. One of my clients said, Sherrine, I notice sometimes you stop sometimes mid sentence. And I'm thinking, I have to do that. I got to figure out my next move, even as I'm
Yeah.
talking, you know?
Yep.
So,
So how long, like if I'm let's say that I've had a practice for 5 years, I've been doing, 5 arches every month, and I really want to ramp things up, and I'm going to invest into marketing. I'm going to invest into other things. Like how long, like with somebody, like if I have somebody like you helping me, how long does it take for me to get my team? Because I know you use the whole team approach where it's not just one person selling, it's the whole office that you're going to help. How long does that take? Is it a month long process? Is it a
okay.
year? Like what?
Yeah. So if it's me helping and training, I always tell patients, excuse me, I always tell clients, doctors specifically, that I can help them dramatically increase their revenue in 30 days or less. Now, for a
Awesome.
treatment coordinator who is not used to a repeatable sales process, is not used to asking open ended questions, and they have to really implement my
Yeah.
process, it may take that person 6 months, it may take them 9 months until they find their voice, right? Because I don't want anyone, if I train someone, I don't want anyone to ever try to be like Sherrine, right? It
Yeah. Yeah.
took me months, probably almost 6 months before I figured out who I was. Trying to use the multiple steps didn't work for me. But I'd say 6 months for you to feel like, you know what? I got this to the point I can be really bold. Now I can say things that might be a little like testy, but I'm gonna try it.
Hmm.
There's like that level of boldness that takes months and repetition.
Got it. Okay. That's beautiful. I love the way that you put that. And then how do I know when I need help from someone like you? Like what point in my practice do I go, you know what? I don't have what I need here, even if I've maybe worked with other people that helped me with closing, or I've even gone to some closing schools or different things like that. There's different options like that out there. And sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. how do I know when it's like, okay, I need professional help, just someone to come in and really help me get this off the ground?
Yeah, I think if a practice owner is seeing potential patients walk out the door to want to go home and think about it, they want to get
Mm,
second opinions, right? If we're hearing a lot of objections, I always use the example. A lot of offices are doing what I call cold case presentations. That means the doctor meets with the patient, the treatment coordinator goes in at the end. They're going in cold to try to
mm,
present figures, and then patients are overwhelmed, right? So if a doctor is doing cold case presentations and they 5 minutes later they're seeing the patient walk out, that's an indication that maybe they need sales training. If they're not hitting their revenue goals on a consistent basis every month, that is an indication that they need some sales training. I think it's as simple as asking your sales team, first of all, do you believe you're in a capacity? Do you feel like you're in sales? There's a lot of treatment coordinators are like, no. And it's like,
yeah.
well, yeah, you are.
Yep. Well, and a lot of times the doctors that create that, right? They're like, no, 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 we're not selling treatment. We're just showing. But I mean, yeah. And then it's no wonder that they're like, oh, no, I'm not in a sales capacity. And if you're not in a sales capacity, it's hard to hold people accountable to the outcomes.
Absolutely. So it starts with the leadership, right? I think the other piece is with Real Talk specifically, I offer online courses. I also offer a complete playbook. So, down from the consultation form to financing worksheets, down to number crunching techniques, down to forms if you want to use traditional pen and paper to be able to manage your follow up, right? If you don't have a system in place, that if your treatment coordinator left your office and went into your other location and the wheels keep moving on a, and everybody feels in alignment, you need a repeatable sales process. You need help.
Got it. Okay. Got it. That makes total sense. Okay, so I'm going to change gears on you a little bit here, and I'm interested in your thoughts on this. So in marketing, what we do is we say we're going to go out and find an avatar, right? So if you work with a pedo Medicaid office, I know that's not what you do, but let's just say from a marketing perspective, we have a pedo Medicaid office. That's a very specific kind of avatar that you're going to go out and attract, and they live in a certain neighborhood, and they live, in they have a certain family structure, and there's all these things that you can put under a pedo Medicaid um, avatar that you're going to try to attract to your office. Then on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, then you have a full arch avatar. And that's a totally different avatar, right? And so you build out these avatars for marketing purposes. So you know where to find these people, you know how to target them, you know how to speak to them, all those kind of things. And marketing is like this is what we do in marketing. From there, we then add a buying persona. And so what ends up happening is you bring in somebody into an office, and the person that you were marketing to may not be the person that's buying the treatment or making the decision on the treatment, right? Because it may change. And a lot of time in dental, it's usually a mom, wife, a daughter, grandmother. It's usually a female that's making that initial point of contact. But half the time, it's not them buying the treatment. It's somebody else buying the treatment, either a child or a spouse that's buying the treatment. So how do you? So that's how I think about it from a marketing standpoint. Is like, okay, we got to attract the avatar, and then we have these buying personas that are going to come in, and they have different needs and wants. At that point, how do you then pick up from there to help? Okay, when this person comes in, this is how we're going to communicate. Because I heard you say something that triggered this thought. You said everybody's unique, but there's predictability in each kind of uniqueness. So could you kind of build on top of that?
Yeah, so my clinical background led me in a path of becoming certified as a DISC trainer and facilitator. DISC is behavioral personality styles. And with all of my offices, the first thing that we do before we get into the nuts and bolts of like, how do we close a sale? How do we overcome an objection? The very first thing we have to do is we have to understand the different personality styles, whether I'm a dominant personality, which I am, whether I'm an influencer, someone who's very talkative, life of the party, not attention to great detail. If someone is a steadiness, which is someone who's very compliant, they follow the rules, but they're resistant to change and they're consensus builders. They like to be able to get the buy-in of their mother, their father, whoever's involved. Or am I dealing with working with a patient that is conscientious, very analytical, lots of details? If you can understand the person in front of you, but also be in tune with your personality style, Sometimes you have to suppress who you are.
Yeah.
As a dominant personality, if I have a dominant patient in front of me, then I have to suppress that strong personality of mine, because if I don't, then we're going to do this, right? So a lot of it
Yeah.
is understanding my characteristics of my personality style, using the discovery process that I implement. So we fill out a very simple questionnaire with our patients. Even with the very first question on that form, I can tell the personality style of that patient. And when the assistant brings that patient back,
What's that question? What is that question? Can you tell me? Or are you?
off the top of my head, oh boy, I just went over this with someone. It's oh God, I almost wish I could pull it up right now.
What kind of question is it? Yeah, no, it's okay. What kind of question is it though?
Here it is. This is the question. If you were to move forward with treatment today, what would be the most important thing that you would need to be able to make that decision? And it's
Ooh,
like
that's such a good question.
A, B, C, and D. And like A off the top of my head is the dominant, where it says I don't need anyone's input. I already know what I want. Like that is dominant 100%.
Yeah.
Don't talk to me about like my children, my job. I am focused on the solution, not even the problem. I
Yeah.
want you to tell me how I can solve it. But that one question is so powerful. And when I see an office that actually utilizes the discovery process that I put in place and then ensures that every team member that gets this form is communicating in a way that is like, okay, assistant, do your handoff to the doctor. Doctor, do your handoff to the treatment court. When it works beautifully like that, it's almost like by the time you go in to present the overall investment, you are equipped with everything that you need to bounce back and roll with resistance when it comes to objections.
That is so good. That is such good stuff. Okay, so now how so let's assume, right? You got your avatar, right? You're attracting these right kind of patients. You understand the buying persona, so you know who's coming in and you see what kind of personality plays. How do you deal with the big one that everybody always brings up, which is financing? How how and where are you dealing with that?
Well, it depends. There's not really, it depends on what was revealed to you in the discovery process. It depends on if the treatment coordinator did a thorough pre screen and gathered information. It depends on what was revealed by the patient. There really isn't
Hmm.
one way. A lot of doctors like to ask me, well, Sherrine, what do we say when a patient says they want to go home and talk to their spouse? Well, it depends.
Depends, right?
What
Yeah.
do we know about the
So you
spouse? Do we ask
mm,
questions about the spouse? Right? Do we ask the patient, does your spouse know that you're here? And and if your
yeah, yeah.
spouse doesn't know that you're here, is there any
So it's
reason
really
why you?
process driven. So the
Yeah.
process is going to dictate how we're going to respond depending on the certain situation. And then so okay, so let me ask this a different way then. So right now, what you're seeing across offices, what's the biggest obstacle that's holding people back from closing more treatment?
Well, I'm hearing a lot of thing about leads, 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 right? And I'm sure you can appreciate that from marketing,
Yep.
quality of leads. But when I talk to an office, specifically that's having a strategy session with me and they don't have a sales process, I question whether or not it's really the leads. I
Hmm.
question, do we just have missed opportunities because we don't know how to ensure that patients actually show up? Is it really a lead situation, when really it's just the patient flow? We're moving patients totally wrong through the office. Are we taking the patient to a consultation room that's located in the front of the office by the exit? That happens often. We're
Mm,
moving patients too many times. It could be so many reasons. And so it's hard to say what's the number one, but I hear a lot about leads, leads, leads. And I always pause and I question and I start asking questions to the doctor because it may not be the leads.
yeah.
You might have 100 good leads. Are we even nurturing them? I
Yeah.
don't
Or
know.
did you even answer the phones is another
Did
big
you
one right now.
even answer the
Yeah.
phone?
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
I
I
hear that a
secret
lot
shop.
where people
I
are like,
do.
I don't have enough new patients. And it's like, you had a 45% unanswered call rate. You know what I mean? It's like, it doesn't matter how much room you have if you don't answer the phone. So now,
Yeah, or
oh, go
you're
ahead.
answering the phone improperly. I just did
Mm,
a secret shop recently, And I like to do that. I have different avatars of who I'm going to be. And I said to the person, front office coordinator that answered the phone, and I said, "Hi, yep, I'm calling. I have an event coming up. I'm so excited about." She says, "Okay, well, what I'll do is I'll send you the paperwork." And I'm thinking, well, time out. Do you want to ask me about my event? Right? But she glazed over that opportunity to engage me a little bit. And then I said, "You know what? We get to the end of it." She says, "Well, let me get you scheduled." I said, "You know what? Let me call my husband and I'll get back." She says, "Okay, have a great day." And I'm like,
Gone. Yeah. Yeah. And you could have been a millionaire with all like all everything and it's just out the door. Maybe you're not the best patient, but you would never know. And then you can sit there and say leads, 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 but you really don't. You really don't know because you are attracting the people that the level of how you are answering the phone, or even again if you're even answering your phone. So that is such a good illustration. Did you record that call? I would love you should record your secret shop calls. I would
"Oh,
love that.
I do record them." But when I do them for my clients, like they don't even want to listen to them. I mean,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
when they find out I'm doing it, they're like, "Sherrine, tell me, what was the score?" And I'm like, "Look, doc, you need to hear this." And they
Mm-hmm.
cringe. But I do
Yeah.
record them as more of an opportunity, as a learning opportunity, not to make
Yeah.
anyone feel bad. But doctors, by the way, you bring up a good point here. We got a lot of doctors that are recording their own calls. But do they ever stop
No. No.
to listen?
Nope. No. I
Well,
know
you
that for a
know,
fact. I track. So here's what's crazy. I had recently had a client that reached out, and I had a client that recently reached out to us, and they said they said, okay, we're not going to use your services anymore, whatever. They offboarded, and I was talking to somebody that works with them, and they were like, yeah, they just didn't have the information that they needed, and I logged into the dashboard that we have. And I'm like, it's so crazy because they had a 6-to-1 ROI on all of their. This is GP. This wasn't even specialty, which GP 6-to-1 is incredible. Their
Mm-hmm.
cost per lead was this, their cost per acquisition is this, their phone conversion was this, their unanswered call rate was this. And the person was like, I don't think they were logging in and looking at the information, right? And it happens all the time because the doctor's busy running a business
Sure.
and they delegate, and there's so many opportunities. There's dental's so rich with opportunities that a lot of times they just don't see that they're just stepping over dollars to pick up pennies, really.
Yeah. And you know what? You're bringing up another point here, Gary, that just made me think of something. I feel for practice owners because I know that the pressure, a lot of the weight is on their shoulders. And oftentimes it probably feels like they're on their own. And that's why I
Yep.
like to really empower treatment coordinators. Like, I want them to think about the ability to sell treatment and change lives almost as their own business.
Mm.
You know, don't leave the doctor hanging to feel like they're on their own to monitor numbers. Own this. We are in the
Yeah.
business of changing lives. So provide the stats,
Yeah.
do your follow up calls,
Yep. And
coach one another, you know?
you got to have a system though. So and this is I know this is what you're really good at providing. Having the numbers without a system, or having a system without the numbers, you can only get so far. You have to have a system, you have to have the numbers with it. And when in my experience, if you want to hold people accountable and you really want to see them excel, having those systems, having those numbers combined, people will explode, and you'll see people who you thought were underperformers all of a sudden explode out of the top. And I know you're smiling because that's probably what you see a lot of times, right?
It's so true because Gary, doctors they'll just schedule a strategy session with me, and they're like, "Well, I have a treatment coordinator, but I think might need to get rid of her." And I'm like, "Whoa, wait a minute. Is it really like? Let's give this young lady or gentleman an opportunity. Is it that they just haven't been trained? Because if that's the case, we might actually be looking to replace someone who actually, as long as they have the tools, might be really talented. You know, it's
Yeah.
not their
Yeah.
fault always."
Such a good point. Yeah, that's such a good point. All right. So we have everybody in the full arch community in an arena, and you're getting up to speak on your topic of real talk of helping people accept more treatment and giving the patients really what they want, and you have one message you can give them. What would that message be around?
I would say the message is, I think in dentistry, we often feel bad about giving patients the truth. We feel bad about telling patients that they need treatment. We sometimes use our own internal thoughts and mindset about affordability, and we often feel like, well, if I can't afford it, then the person in front of me probably can't afford it. So I'm not going to lean in. Maybe I'll tell the patient that they can wait. But my message is we have a moral and ethical obligation to educate patients about treatment that they need. We don't need to fear it. We need to give patients the truth that we would want for ourselves. I was a patient, not a dental, but a bariatric patient. And
Mm.
because of a front office coordinator who was 1,000 miles away from my house, she convinced me to fly 1,000 miles to have weight loss surgery
Wow.
14 years ago. And I lost 115 pounds because of this young lady. I've been trying to find her all this time. All this time, I
That's
cannot
awesome.
find this young lady. But she changed my life. She gave me the truth that I was a food addict. She gave me the truth
Mm.
that I needed to get on that plane and lose weight. We need to give our patients the same truth and not feel bad about it because we are in the business of changing lives, period.
That's so good. So powerful. It was such a good message. All right. So if someone's like, you know what? I need help with this. How do they reach out to you? How do they get in contact with you?
The best way to reach me is my website, which is www.realtalkselling.com, realtalkselling.com, or you can send me an email at info@realtalkselling.com.